Welcome back to the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. Today on episode 26, obviously you can see that we have a guest on. I know the past couple episodes have not had a guest, but they have also been really cool. Talking about World Cup kits, and then I think the one last week was awesome. It's something I've been thinking about at work a while here. So yeah, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, go listen to that and then come back and listen to this one. But yes, obviously you can see we have a guest on today. His name is Zach, or Rated, or Zach Create, whatever you want to go by, whatever you guys probably know him by. I personally know him by Rated Designs. We'll get into that. In the podcast here, but yeah, Zach, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to being a guest on here. Thank you for kind of wanting to be on. That's awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. I wanted to get on one of these podcasts and listen to a couple of yours actually, and I really like them. So I was like, you know what? Why not?
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate the kind words about that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so why don't you kind of tell a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of go into what we have slated to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said earlier, Zach Create, Zach Tyler, whatever you want to call me, Rated Designs, Rated Creative. There's so many different monikers of what I've built on both sides of the coin. I have a degree in graphic design, emphasis in branding and brand architecture. I went from kind of this kid that just loved design to a kid that made a life out of it and made it my profession. It's pretty awesome. Crazy road to get there, but it's where I am now, and I love it. It's very, very, very satisfying to see all the hard work pay off, and I've still got a long way to go. I'm always learning, always trying to take as much as I possibly can. I never think I know everything, which I think is important for sure. But yeah,
100%. So I guess what do you do now?
So right now I work for a local agency. I'm my title is graphic designer, obviously, but primarily what we do is a lot of commercial branding. So messaging, creating a brand ground up, so logos, brand research, brand architecture, anything from it can be a new product, so product packaging, to something like as simple as we need a website done, so it kind of covers everything. We do a lot of merchandising within certain big box retailers and stuff like that. So it's always we kind of do everything under the sun when it comes to graphic design, but primarily we're a smaller agency, so it's very very hands-on with the client instead of going through multiple vessels to get to the designers and a lot of things going on. But it's the best. I love it. It's good to be in the agency world for sure.
Yeah, I'm just starting to dabble into commercial stuff on a freelance basis, and getting clients, getting local clients like that, and everything. It's kind of a different world to go into. There's some things that for me personally I didn't think about since I was in school.
Sure.
So it's and even stuff I didn't really have to think about outside of school, when I'm designing. So it's for me, it's been a completely different world. How has been, I guess where you started, where I know you from, is you started in gaming, and that's kind of gaming and esports. That's where I guess that whole Rated Designs kind of started. I guess if you want to elaborate on that, I mentioned it twice. Elaborate on Rated and where that kind of came from and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of talk about it from that standpoint, and then, we can always stop whenever you want to elaborate on a point.
For sure.
So I was 14 or 15. I actually started, there was people who are around my age or maybe, a couple years younger would remember this, or even older, but there was a site called Game Battles that was huge, and it was all about being the best team and stuff like that. And back in Call of Duty 4 and a lot of the Call of Duties, it was big because competitive gaming was just it was a thing that I loved to do. It was something I was good at. But whenever we would create a team, you had to have a team logo. You had to do all these different types of things. And there used to be this like generator that people used to use. And it would just like kind of make you design your own thing, but it was like a handful of fonts and a handful of little styles, and you'd throw them together with some colors, and that was your thing, right?
Right.
So from that, I loved it. Something about it. I just loved being able to like kind of represent it in like a visual way, and I always thought it was a cool thing. Like I'd look at people and be like, wow, that's a cool logo or cool design. Now at the time I didn't know what those things were. Like I just was like, that's a cool looking thing, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, it really just started with something like that, and then I started doing a lot of the gaming world. Like on game battles on your forum page, like you'd be able to embed designs into them, and I would do that, created my own little thing, and then that was actually not under the name Rated. That was under this name called Nex, Nexxx, and it came. It slowly progressed to when I hit to YouTube and started to really dive into more of like that gaming esports world, mostly sniping for what I was doing, and it led me to a lot of my friends that are still killing it in phase, and a lot of my friends that are still around doing all their things, and being one of the founders of Obey when it started with Agony and a lot of those guys. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, there was a point with that whole journey that I kind of I got into design or in art school essentially, and I just kind of had this moment where I was designing a lot in school, and I started to realize like a lot of the ways that you would go about things, or the types of designs, types of fonts, types of styles, and all those things that people use heavily within esports and or the gaming world is not really how the corporate world functions, and a lot of the commercial stuff that you see out there. You're not going to see a lot of Cinema 4D exploding text type stuff.
That brings me back when you say that. Oh my
right,
goodness.
right. It's not a or crazy flares all over the place that are gonna, you know, be on billboards and stuff like that. It's just not a thing, or like you don't see that on packaging design. And it took me about, I would say about my second year in school, I started to realize like, oh, like there's a whole world outside of this small little thing that I did, and I ended up just falling in love with it because there's so much more to that side. And with gaming, I think I just burnt myself out, and I got to the point where I was just like, this isn't really for me anymore. It just wasn't my thing. And there's some people that stuck around and killed it, but more power to them.
Yeah, shit, I didn't even realize. I forgot that you were like one of the OG like founders of Obey. Completely forgot.
There's a lot. I mean, I was in Dare. I was one of the original Dare. I was in all those guys were like my friends. They still to this day, like I'll I talk to them here and there. I mean, I knew it's kind of crazy to go on like Twitch or like on Twitter and see them like just like they're huge on YouTube, like Jev and all these guys. It's amazing to see how big they got. But yeah,
that's going way back.
Oh yeah, like this all started 2010.
I was gonna say like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. I'll be 30 in January, so I would have been 18-ish.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
17, 18.
That puts everything into perspective, man. Jeez, I didn't realize that was that long ago. Holy crap.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, but it's a long time ago. There were a lot of lessons learned for sure. It was a
oh my goodness.
Totally different person than I was 12 years ago, for sure.
So I guess for you, when talking about design, then how has that transition been from gaming into kind of commercial stuff. When did that start exactly?
Probably around like 2015 ish.
Yeah.
I I applied randomly for like art school to this private art school that is local, and I found out it's one of the top design programs in the U.S. And I was just like, ah, you know what? There's no way I'm going to get into it. Like so I applied with the portfolio and got in. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like on a whim that it happened. And so your first year at that school, they call it foundation year essentially, and you do all the different mediums. So digital color, color theory, painting, draw, all of that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that first year, your second semester, you try to apply to what you want to do. I already knew I wanted to, do graphic design,
Mm-hmm.
so it was easy for me. But that second year, which I think was about 2015, 2016-ish, right around there, I there was a switch. I realized that there was something about it, like being able to design a menu and design layouts and have somebody benefit from the communication through design, that I just gravitated towards, unlike anything else I've ever done. I mean, there was just something there that I don't know if it could have been like the chair of my department. I was just so, honored to he mentored me and like really sculpted me into the designer I am today. But there was just something about it. I don't really know. I just really loved how not everything has to be this grungy, dark, faded out, high contrast stuff. Like you can go into different directions and try things and
Mm-hmm.
try to pull on people's emotions in different ways. And when you start to learn about the gestalt and all these different types of things within design and how people think and how the marketing works and how demographics play into these types of things, you really start to like get this love for trying to sell something. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the best thing for me, like when it comes from like, cause I started in like pub stomping and stuff. Like
Sure.
like Black Ops. Oh shit! Let's see the game. I mean we always pair up like our time frames with games when it comes to gaming, obviously. So probably around like Black Ops 2 is when
Yeah.
when I really started getting fully immersed in like the gaming scene. And then like so from there, like completely just learning everything YouTube wise and not really caring about principles and everything, and then going into collegiate and more commercial education about everything, and then coming out of it, and then now sometimes recircling and still designing within that space. I mean that's kind of how esports and gaming has progressed, right? The consideration of commercializing esports and gaming as a true entertainment industry. That's kind of, I mean, that was kind of the road it was going on. So design is kind of, following those footsteps.
Yeah, very much.
But being able to kind of just like know what I know now from education and then look back on where everything was and just kind of seeing how things kind of go along that timeline is just something I've been amazed in, even in like not many people I feel like now, I mean, granted, I talked to some of my old friends from back in the back in the day, and obviously you said you had some of those people that you still talk to now, but the majority of the people that are in gaming right now that I like come across, just they're like brand new. Like there's not many people that are like even 5 years deep into the gaming industry. It's like, oh yeah, I like designers. I'm saying obviously gamers have been gaming forever, but like designers, like they're just brand new, like year and a half into the gaming industry, and they never knew how designs used to be. Like all that. I mean, the stuff you were referencing before, like the Cinema 4D, like the exploding, like all that shit.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of the guys who I'll tell you a funny story. So obviously Sesso, and we,
Oh
we
yeah.
love him, but it was funny. So I was back when Sesso was starting. I remember him being around, and me being the immature kid that I was, you know, I still was so like I had this like I don't know what it was. Like I was like, how could he be doing what I'm doing? Like this is what I do. What do you and I was just such like this I think really what it was looking back, I was threatened by him
Mm-hmm.
and I did everything I possibly could because I was nasty to him. I was not it was not it was clearly me being young, immature and not knowing how to deal with competition in the right way and letting that egotistical aspect of myself get to my head, and it ruined the friendship that that I could have had with Sesso at that time. And Sesso and I have talked, and he's a great guy, and I'm super happy that he has become what he has. And there's no one I would rather have than him take that torch and do what he's doing with it
Mm-hmm.
because he is fantastic at what he does. But I didn't get to have that like mentorship to him because that's who I was to him. And I didn't know that, at that time. For me, I was just I'm rated designs like this is my territory, like very immature and very like alpha male in a weird way. And, it took me until I was about 25 years old that I realized a lot of the relationships that I destroyed because of this egotistical aspect of myself. And I think we all go through that as designers
Mm-hmm.
because we're so um
Prideful.
prideful. You want everybody to like your stuff. And at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, you want everybody to like you as well. I mean, I think that's just a human thing, but there's something about, when somebody sits there and they go, "Dude, you're like incredible. The design work you do is just insane. Like I don't know where it comes from. It's amazing. Let me learn from you." And that I took for granted. I didn't realize that those people were like, "I want to learn from you. What can you how can you teach me to be better?" And I took that as praise. Like I'm who's
Yeah.
better than me.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it was the young immaturity and I had to go through that like like being humbled, like you're not that. And I think that's what made me realize like there's another world out here of design and you're nowhere close to that. Like you might be the shit that for a couple of years, but you're nothing compared to some of these guys out there. So if you want to be those guys, you need to shut your ego off, you need to take that chip off your shoulder, and you need to open your mind and just be like, listen, I don't know a damn thing. And that's Sesso is definitely the one that I still to this day I'm like, man, like what was I thinking? Like I was such a douchebag, like and but now that him and I have kind of rekindled as like we're friends, I like to call it that. But
Yeah.
it's good, it's good to see him do what he's doing. And I'm happy for him. I really am. And there's all these really really great designers like that from back then that are still going and they're killing it. Jay or from Apex Predator. I'm sure you know him. He does Arma. I'm not sure.
Apex
Phase
Predator.
JPEG.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Arma
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Centrum. Arma
So
Centrum. Yeah,
Arma,
yeah,
right, and he's killing it with jerseys and the esports stuff, and I'm so happy for him. He's such a great guy.
yeah, yeah.
And like there's all these guys that have just capitalized on something they're really really good at. And Cesso with tutorials and teaching design and just being that guy that I was not mature enough to be at the time. And I think he really really is killing it, and I love to see it for sure. But there's a lot of guys out there that I run into here and there that are like, "You still doing design stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I made it my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's literally it's my thing,
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Ah, man, you remember this guy? Remember this guy?" And we go about memory lane for hours, but
Mm-hmm.
it's good times. But it definitely was one of those times where it's like I accept it. I don't need it anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm. It was a great time to have it.
Have you ever thought about going back to creating content?
You know, yes, but I don't know. I don't. I don't know how to create. Like, I don't know if the structure in which I used to create content would benefit the way that I do things now. Um, because tutorials are great, and I think it's you know
Mm-hmm.
you know people always want to learn something, but
Right.
it might not be the where my content would thrive. And streaming is kind of the same thing. Is like I don't want to stream and just design something all the time. Like because there's days where it's like I don't really need to design something, but I still want to like interact with people.
Right.
And it's kind of it's tough, but I'm uploading design packs and little graphics type things up to my Zach Create website, and I've got 3 things up there right now. I'm always messing around on my Discord servers and talking to people, so it's always good. But I really like the little sports group that I've kind of not created, but nudged myself into,
Mm-hmm.
and really it's cool to see that type of stuff for sure.
So how has that kind of been getting into sports and everything? Cause yeah, all of a sudden, like I saw you started posting like Cleveland Brown stuff, and I take it you're a big Cleveland Brown guy.
Oh yeah, being from Cleveland, yes, unfortunately and fortunately, depending on how you wanna look at it. Yeah.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
no,
how's
actually,
that been?
it's crazy. I always posted like years ago, like on my Instagram or even on Twitter. Like I just love doing LeBron edits or like stuff like that. That like
Right.
my favorite players and stuff like that.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, somebody like one of my friends goes like, "Why don't you start like doing more Cleveland-based stuff and like start building like a small little community of people that know you because of the design work you do. Like you do good stuff." And I'm like, I don't know. And then like last year, I started just like during the draft, I was like, okay, all these kids are doing jersey swaps. Like, why is everyone making a big deal out of this stuff? And like some of them are good, and then some of them like they look terrible. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing? So I'm like, okay, well, let me try one. You know,
Mm-hmm.
see what happens. And I was doing some little Baker Mayfield things and little posters there, and it was getting a little traction. But then I did a jersey swap for I think it was like Deshaun Watson when he got to Cleveland Browns. Just ran like regardless of his off-field stuff, I was like, let me just try the jersey swap, and I did it and uploaded it, and that's where it all took off.
Kind of went
And
viral.
yeah, it kind of went viral. Everybody in Cleveland was going crazy. Obviously, the the backlash too, just because like of his
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But
Right.
um, and then during the draft, like I started just taking certain players that I thought we could potentially draft and putting them in Browns uniforms. And it started getting big. And then this summer, I started doing a lot of cool, and that from that, I ended up getting a contract with, or not a contract, but like a 1099 with the Big Three, and I started doing a lot of their graphic work as a freelance thing, and it was great. It was a great experience. Nothing but love from those peeps over there, and I was
Mm-hmm.
jersey swapping a bunch of people for them, and creating posters, all these things, and it was awesome. But then I just started doing these. I started mixing some of the compositing skills that I know with some other things, and it just kind of just took off. And like now I post things sometimes, and sometimes I go a month or two without posting anything. It's just
Mm-hmm.
I do it for fun, but it's always cool to get to know some of these guys that don't have the necessarily the following or the notoriety, and just see how insanely talented they are. I mean, like that CD design dude, just yeah. I mean, his lighting is
Oh
incredible.
yeah,
He
he's nuts.
yeah, and it's like just seeing these guys, Palmer, like these guys are really good, and I like surrounding myself with people who are better than me or better at certain things, so I can learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like just it really just came out of me being bored, and I'm like, let's try some.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the community aspect of everything and what you thought about that, but you kind of mentioned it already, and yeah, I can't agree more. Like this type of, I guess, I don't really want to call it camaraderie because it not really is. It's not really camaraderie. It's just like people are more open to asking questions and taking feedback and kind of working together rather than working against one another. I feel like back in the day it felt I don't know if it was a good thing or not, but it felt a little bit more competitive and no one really wanted to work together unless you were with the right people. Like obviously we had those friends that like we designed with every so often, but it wasn't like groups of 20, 25 people or 30 people, however big group chats can get now, to where everyone's just like, what did you post? How did you do this? Like, you know, like what are your different methods of attacking different composition styles or whatever the hell it is,
right.
You know? Like people, when I first started getting into sports, they're more like open arms with getting questions and asking questions and taking feedback and giving feedback, and because it was all for like it was all for the aspect of like we are designers within sports, you know. This is our community. We kind of need to band together almost, because I mean at the end I think more of it comes with a maturity of the people being involved. That 100% helps, because I mean back in the day in gaming, I mean you said it yourself, and I was the same way. I was a little asshole as well. So you know,
it's what it is. I mean,
the ego is there, but
we were. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I always look at it as there's no ego. Like at the end of the day, it comes down to like I always say this to people that are like, well, what, you know, when they ask me a question, they're always just like, you know, what's the biggest thing within, like, what are some things in design that you always try to tell people that like are young in this type of world and they think that they have it figured out or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, one, this profession will humble the crap out of you every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're never going to be, you know, perfect. Like there is going to be crazy things. The second thing I always tell people is that if you're not asking a ton of questions about how something is done, you're never going to figure out, you know, how to create something better, you know. And the third thing I always tell people is your workflow is correct. It doesn't, everyone else's workflow and the way that they do something, the way that you, if it works for you, do it. Like there doesn't need to be a specific way. I mean, obviously organization's important, but like if you work in chaos, do it. Like no one, as long as you're getting that great product out, doesn't matter how it's done. And those are like the three things I always tell people is all those things. Is ask a million questions. Now, the problem is, and I think I figured it out, is a lot of us when we were that age, some people would ask questions and we wouldn't tell them because we thought it was a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I know how to do this, but like, I'm not gonna tell everybody because then I'm gonna, you know, show them my hand. And it's like, they can go on YouTube and figure it out. Like everybody, there's a million people who know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We're not that special. We're really not. And it's hell. They can go to Rated Designs and figure it out. No, but
little plug there. It's okay.
Right. No, but yeah, I mean, it's really not that special. Like we think that like we find this beautiful thing. I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, did you know this hotkey does this? My buddy's like, yeah, I've known that for about 10 years. And I'm like just because I figured it out doesn't mean like it's this brand new, you know, thing. And I mean that's always hysterical to me. It's like we were like, so, oh, what font is that? I'm not telling you. It's like, you're gonna find it anyways. Like, you know, like somebody else is gonna know what it is.
It was almost like they're always out to get me type of thing. It was
right.
Like you know, it was like they're asking because they want to know my secrets and they want to be better than me. And it was like,
right,
like it was just like, fucking leave my area. You need to know the shit that I know. Like it's
absolutely.
And then now it's completely flipped. It's like,
yeah,
no one gives a shit. Ask away. Everyone wants to know everyone. It's like, you know, who cares? It's like everyone's in the same boat. You're all trying to know the same thing. You're all trying to better each other or better yourself. So why not share secrets or whatever you want to call share information?
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, if there's a shorter way to do something, I'm all for it. Like,
exactly.
hell, so sick and tired of some of the long ass compositing tricks that I learned. I used to like in Photoshop, like when you're doing lights and darks, when you were sitting there, like, messing with lighting and stuff like that, I used to use a black brush and a white brush, and I'd use blending options. Then I found out that you can use levels and just a mask, and that changed my whole life. Like, it is the easiest thing in the world. And then, like, I thought to myself, I'm like, why did I do this for years? I mean, I got a good result, but at the same time, I'm like, I took 35 layers to do the same thing I could have done on one. And so my file's now 35 gigs instead of one.
You have to
like,
save it. You have to save it as a PSB instead of a PSD
Right,
because it's
right.
fucking 100 fucking gigs.
It's its own external hard drive.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Fucking
for
A.
sure. It's interesting. Yeah, it's. I'm always trying to learn, man. That's what it is.
So have you thought about switching your career path into sports at all, or staying commercial?
No, because I don't remember where I heard this, but like there's always like there's a quote I heard. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's like, you know, your hobby can't be your job. And like I really never like understood it. Like I had to unpack it in my head. I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
people play basketball and that's their hobby that's turned into a job. It's like, well, is design really my hobby? No, it's like my job. It's something I love to do. I can love something that I'm doing, but it doesn't need to be my hobby. My hobby is something that I'm doing outside of my typical everyday job. So I just look at the sports as like that's my hobby, and I don't want to bring money and pressure into something that I truly just love to do on my free time. Like, like it's awesome getting messages from these players and just having them want to use certain things, or,
Mm-hmm.
having a photographer send you images and like, dude, do this thing. It's really awesome to be able to do that. And it's like, I don't want to put up, I couldn't, for me, I feel like I would run out of steam and I'd burn myself out because it's the same thing over and over and over again, virtually, like relative to what I do now, where it's like I could be working on a product that
Yeah.
cows use versus a beer company the next day. Like so, like there's constant change, so it keeps me on my toes, and I like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always being challenged, and I think that's kind of why I just sports is it's awesome. I mean, if like the Cavs go, hey, we want a couple posters from you. I'm not going to say no. Like it's just it's just one of those things where it's like I don't actively seek it out.
Right. Okay. I get that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't like when it comes to like your hobby being your job, or whether or not that's like a good thing or not. I don't know. That's actually like a cool thing you kind of bring up there. It's cuz I'm kind of thinking about that too. It's like, yeah, it's like
It's a weird quote because it makes you realize like it makes I feel like it's very subjective because like the way that I look at a hobby is it's just something I love to do outside of it's my hobby. It's like I love to make music. I love playing guitar. It's my hobby. I don't
yeah.
want to go be a professional musician because one, I'm too old, and two, I hate working with other musicians. Like like it's just those are I love building Legos. I'm not a pro Lego like builder. Like that's like how I look at it. Now that's how I unpacked it. Some people would be like, well, you can't you can't make it in design because that's your hobby, so you can't love what you do. It's like, no, you can love what you do, but that's your profession. That's not your hobby.
Mhm.
You see, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I see what you're saying.
I could totally take that wrong. But uh,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, but yeah. I see what you're saying. I guess in a more broad sense, like you're still designing, right?
yeah, sure.
You're still sitting down at a computer and designing. So it's like, is it really like I mean, the content's different, 100%. Like would I do what I do at work here on my free time? Fuck no. No, I wouldn't. But like, I still like designing. Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I love it
100%.
too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But like, if I'm taking a freelance client, I'm not doing the shit I'm doing at work. Like, I'm not going through that whole process. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not happening. I can't do that because it's just there's so much more that's involved in branding and package design and all that different stuff. So it's like if somebody comes to me and is like, "Yeah, I heard you're into branding." It's like I'd love to do it, but I'm not going to go into like this crazy detail, and I'm not going to take 30 of you guys over, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a month. Like I gotta, I'll just burn myself out.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So kind of transitioning towards the back end here of this podcast,
Sure.
I've been wanting to ask you, why did you rebrand from Rated Designs to Zach Create, or like away from Rated Designs? What was the whole notion there?
Yeah, I don't even remember when I did that. Goodness. Must have been like at least a year ago or something, or a couple of years ago, maybe. Yeah, yeah, it was definitely after or before the lockdown for sure. Um, I attempted I attempted to kind of like come back in a sense in like 2019. Rejoined Obey. That was an absolute disaster because it's not the same team anymore. It's not even owned by the same people. It's not so. Just was a it was an absolute disaster. But I started thinking to myself, I'm like, you know, sometimes it's a like I listen to a ton. Just to preface, I listen to a ton of like philosophical and like crazy podcasts where they talk about business. Like I am a Gary V guy, but sometimes I'm like I try to like go left of center with him because he's on all the time, and it's like sometimes the things that he says don't always apply to someone like me.
Right.
But I don't remember exactly who said what I'm going to say, but it was along the lines of your time that you had was a small time in your life that was super impactful. And just to look at it now and be like, oh my God, I helped so many people just be interested in design. Like, just be interested in art. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really care. Like, if you're working in it now, awesome. If not, I still got you. Like, I set out from the get-go not knowing what was going to happen. And the fact that I got to 80,000 subscribers is just outrageous to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I just got some people to just be interested in design for 6 months, a week, forever, whatever it may be. And I'm okay with turning the page. And the last thing in that process was finally going from my brand of Rated and kind of closing that door
Mm-hmm.
and just opening something new because I'm no longer that person. I don't do that, you know, tutorial stuff. I don't really design the way that I used to. I don't have the same habits that I used to do. The way I look at things is very different, and I don't want that to be kind of like this clouded image of who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather people look at it and be like, "Oh, I remember Rated Designs in those 7 years or however long years,"
Right.
versus why is he still trying to do something that clearly is just it was a time sensitive thing. So I just decided Zach Create, and so it was.
Yeah, I guess in a sense of like if you would have stayed as Rated Designs, would you would have like a feeling that you had to produce content, or could you, like now, could you, instead of being Zach Create, your Rated Designs, but do the stuff you're doing now, or would you still have that feeling that you'd have to go back to kind of like and like carry out that, that kind of alias in almost as like a character? Like, is that how you're kind of viewing these things? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I've never really thought of it that. I feel like it wouldn't be authentic, and
for sure.
it wouldn't be me being me, and I'm a big proponent of like being honest. And if I'm being honest with myself, I wouldn't. I'm not rated designs anymore. Like it was part of me. It's always going to be part of me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm not going to get a tattoo of it, but I mean, it's it'll always be part of who I am, and it's going to be a story for years and years for my future kids, for whatever it is. It'll be a story of the ancient YouTube, but like it'll it will it's always going to be with me. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
who I am, and I want the people that still follow me and still know who I am and still um, kind of were around those times and still kind of check in and stuff like that to understand that like I'm more than open to talk about rated design. I'm more than open to talk about those times and stuff like that, but you're not going to get that same, you know, show me
Yeah.
this really sweet tutorial on Cinema 4D. It's not going to happen.
Right.
I just can't, I can't promise that content anymore because I know how I used to feel like, getting towards the end of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, 100%. I get that. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, thanks for coming on today. It's been
I, Thanks for having me, man.
it's been an awesome
Oh,
conversation.
yeah.
I know my younger self probably never would have guessed that I'd end up having a conversation with Rated Designs. Um, but you're not Rated Designs anymore. You're Zach.
No.
Zach Create.
Like
um,
it's funny. It's crazy. There are certain people that will like I hang out in my buddy's Discord and we'll play Call of Duty still here and there, and like people drop in and they're like talking, and then somebody will call me Rated, and I'm like, what's up? And then like someone's like, Rated, you mean like Rated? And then it just saying that like, oh my god, I used to and I was like, cool. I've always just been somebody that it's like if I was that person, I'd want to make sure that like I was cool to them and stuff like that, because that's at the end of the day, I made an impact. So however I can
hmm
contribute again, I will.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, anyways, thank you for coming out today. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on and kind of have a conversation and have a 42-minute conversation. Yeah, it's been awesome, man. It's been awesome
Yeah.
to kind of get to know you. I'm sure obviously we'll be staying connected and everything like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So for the viewers, go down below in the description wherever you're viewing this: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever other crazy podcast hosting site this goes on. Go down below. Zach's all of his links will be down below. At least I know for a fact his Twitter and his website will be down below. Whether I want to toss that old YouTube channel up there so you guys can have some reference of
They'll find it. They'll find it eventually. We don't have to put it there. They'll find it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, all his socials will be down below. Make sure to go connect with him. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. You know his stance on that, so go ask questions. Feel free to kind of contact him and pick his brain a little bit. But yeah,
Absolutely.
this has been episode 26. I really appreciate you guys coming out and listening today. Zach, again, I appreciate you taking your time. And as always, make sure you go tell someone that you love them today. All right, take it easy.